got my backpack. We're gonna go ride to the forest now. So, adventure time. It's so nice and quiet here. And it's been raining the past few days, so like everywhere smells like, you know that smell after it rains? Everywhere smells like that. Petrichor, that's the word. How am I funding my travels? What's my career at the moment? So I work in architecture, but I left the job that I was working at when I left Byron, when I moved overseas. And since then, I've just been doing freelance work like here and there. It's not super consistent, so it's like on and off. But other than that, just my savings. And I also just haven't been spending that much while I've been overseas. Like I'm not paying for rent while I'm in London because I'm staying with family. My accommodation here was pretty cheap. So yeah, I feel like just my savings, a bit of freelance work, and just spending minimal amounts where possible. Someone has asked if I have any advice for someone who wants to start traveling as a teenager finishing high school. I did the same thing. After I finished high school, I went overseas for 5 months, and I was able to afford that because I had a part-time job while I was at school, and then when I graduated I started working full-time, so 5 days a week I think it was. I had 2 jobs after I finished school. I was working in a pharmacy and at an ice cream shop, and I remember I was just saving really, really hard for like 6 months to make money. I think I saved maybe $12,000 for that 5-month trip, but I think I was able to travel for so long with $12,000 because I was traveling with my boyfriend at the time and with friends. So because we were splitting the cost of accommodation, it was a lot cheaper. So I definitely recommend that if you want to go traveling after school. Like, see if you have some friends you want to go with. Definitely plan your trip. I feel like booking in advance ends up being a lot cheaper usually. And I feel like because it was my first time traveling as well without family, I just wanted like the certainty to know like when I was going to be going places, and just to like, it just gave me a lot of peace of mind to have it all booked. Whereas now I feel like I'm traveling and I'm just kind of booking things as I go, because I have more confidence, but you have to build up the confidence. So yeah, definitely get a part-time job, get 2 jobs if you can. I remember I worked at the chemist, and then I'd work in the evening at the ice cream shop. And so I do like the day shift and then the night shift. I was so exhausted, but I think because I knew it was only like temporary and I wasn't going to be working like that forever, like it was a means to an end. I had a goal that I was working towards. So I felt like I had a lot of motivation to work really hard for that. So yeah, I think that's my advice for someone traveling after high school. Definitely a huge, like, I think it's really, really beneficial to travel after high school if you can. Like, I took a gap year before I started uni, and I feel like it was just a great reset and just like exposes you to the world while you're young. And like, I don't know, I think it's a great way to just like get a taster of like, I went to Europe at that time from Australia, and I feel like that's like a very common thing, a very common gap year, to go to Europe and spend like a few months there because the distance is so far. The person that asked me this question is from New Zealand, so it's probably a similar situation, but just because the distance is so far, when you go you really want to like make the most of it. And probably I made the most of it too much, like spent a lot of like short amounts of time in a lot of different places, but at the same time I don't regret it because I feel like it gave me a really good like taster to a lot of different places. And then when I wanted to go traveling again in the future, I knew where I wanted to go back to because of that trip. So yeah, definitely a very beneficial experience, and you can make it work. This is such a tranquil location. Can we just take this in for a moment? There's like moss everywhere. The moss is so like squishy, so I feel like I can just lie on it. It's so relaxing, honestly, and there's like no noise. It's very bizarre. Like there's not even any like bird song. It's so silent. So silent. It's beautiful. And I thought I didn't have to worry about snakes. I was like, oh, this is so nice being in Sweden, like not being in Australia, and being able to be in nature and not like be afraid of snakes. And then yesterday I saw 2 snakes. I was like, what is going on? Where am I? But apparently there's snakes in Sweden. Apparently there's wolves and bears too, but I haven't seen any, so wish me luck. Next question. Let's see. Let's answer a few questions here. Another question I got was how to build the confidence to do things alone. I feel like this is a huge one, and a question I get a lot, and I think something I've really learnt to do over the years as I lay in this forest in the Swedish countryside by myself. I feel like it's definitely small steps, and like not forcing yourself to suddenly do something really crazy by yourself. Like, it's baby steps and like building blocks. So like if you have like a goal of like something you want to do alone, but it's like bringing you fear, let's say you want to go on a solo trip overseas, but you're like kind of apprehensive and hesitant about it because you have a lot of fears around doing that. I would recommend starting small. Like, instead of going on a solo trip overseas first, why don't you go on like a little city break near you, or go to a town near where you live, so you're not going too far away. You're stepping outside of your comfort zone a little bit, but you're not like going to 100. Like, definitely just start exposing yourself to little things, like going out to eat for meals alone. I feel like with solo travel, there's a lot that falls under that. Like, when you're traveling alone, you're doing activities by yourself, you're eating alone, you're doing all these different things alone that you can start doing in your everyday life just to build up your confidence and get you more comfortable with things. So I definitely say, be like, once a week you're going to take yourself on a date night and do something for yourself. You can go out to a bar, go to a restaurant, take yourself out for lunch, just go for a coffee, get a drink somewhere. Just like do one thing out alone to start building your confidence to do little things. Take a trip by yourself, give yourself a little like a mental health break, take a weekend away. Just like little things. I definitely feel like that's the key to building confidence, to doing things alone, and also remembering that everyone is in their own world. Like, I feel like we sometimes get stuck in our kind of like our ego, and we think about ourselves a lot in a very sort of selfish way, thinking, oh my God, people are looking at me, people are thinking a certain way about me. But the reality is, like, nobody is thinking about you. Everyone is so absorbed in their own worlds, and even if they are thinking about you, it doesn't affect you, and you just keep it moving. Like, it doesn't matter what people think of you as long as you are fully enjoying the experience and you are like having a good time. I think that's a big part to building confidence to doing things alone. Just letting go of that fear of being perceived a certain way. Another huge thing that helps me build confidence to do things alone is like remembering that the world is actually a relatively nice place and people are friendly. Like, most of the time, people are kind-hearted and people are good. I think that the way that we consume like media and TV and movies sometimes can give us quite a warped perception of the world and of people, and I think that we start to see maybe like the bad more often than we see the good, and we are afraid of going out and doing things alone because we fear that people are going to be a certain way or that the world is going to be a certain way. When in reality, I feel like from all the experiences I've encountered with people and just like from doing things alone in the world, I feel like people are generally very nice, and it's very nice to remember that like the world isn't such a bad place. Like, I don't know, I feel like we get tricked into thinking that everything's much worse than it is, for the most part. I also just had to stop watching like horrors and thrillers and things because I would just scare myself for no reason when I was doing things alone. So I cut that out, and I feel like I just I consciously consume things to make my mind a nice place rather than putting fear into myself, because that is just no help to build your confidence to do things alone. So yeah, little steps, don't be afraid of perception, and consciously consume things to avoid putting unnecessary fear into yourself would be my tips for building confidence to do things alone. The moss is so fascinating. Like, I read this book about moss this year called Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and it really just made me like pay so much more attention to moss and be like, there's really it's a whole world, it's a whole ecosystem under your feet that we just don't even think about half the time, but it's really, really so incredible, and there's like so many different types of moss all like existing in the one patch. It's crazy. And like the way they reproduce, it's just a very fascinating world. But anyway, next question. Biggest lessons I've learned this year. This is a big question because I feel like I've learned a lot this year. It's been a really, really big, transformative, healing year for me. I've let go of a lot and like reshaped my mind in a lot of ways, which has felt really, really good. I feel like every month has felt like a whole new beginning. And I feel the same way this month, like the start of October. I'm like, whew, this feels like a new year. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's a nice thing to be self-aware and to realize and notice when you're like moving through different phases of your life, and like pay attention to the new eras. Honestly, I feel like we go through so many new eras in our lives. I feel like it becomes a bit of a joke when you're always like, oh my god, I'm in a new era, I'm in my this era, I'm in my that era. But we really are always changing and growing and evolving. I think that we are always going through new eras, but the biggest lesson I've learned this year, I've learned a few. I would say like I think that most of the lessons I've learned have been like letting things go. Like letting things go that I feel like I've just grown up being conditioned to believe, and realizing that I don't actually align with those beliefs, and then being able to let them go. Like things like feeling like I am a burden is a huge one for me this year, and just learning to show up as myself and express myself and be my full self without this fear of being a burden or feeling like you're hindering someone else's life by sharing your complexities and your problems and just being open with people and being vulnerable. I feel like I really moved through that in a lot of different ways, like therapy, number one, also friends, having friendships that are more open and friendships where we can share all different parts of ourselves and feel no shame for doing so is a huge one. Also reading and consuming content that is like, for example, I read Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, her autobiography, and I found that really, really, really helpful because it was just like hearing somebody else's story and hearing somebody else speak their truth so fully and wholeheartedly and like unapologetically, made me, and then also like the response I felt to reading that book, I felt very like, you know, when you feel like you resonate with something just from somebody's story, like just from somebody sharing themselves, you feel like you can resonate and you see reflections of yourself in that person. And then it made me be able to show up, even like on YouTube and like online, it made me more able and more free to show up as myself without feeling like I'm being a burden for doing so, because I was like, if people feel like they resonate or if people feel like they can see reflections of themselves in me, that's really beautiful and can be a very, very powerful thing, and definitely gave me a lot more like license and agency to just like be myself without feeling like being a burden. I think it's a big thing that we experience just through like growing up, maybe experiencing certain traumas and like certain types of parenting can make you feel like you are being a burden just for being yourself, which is really sad and never the truth. So yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest lessons I've learned this year for sure. And I feel like that has led to so many other lessons as well. Like it's led to me being more open with people, being more vulnerable, being able to express myself and communicate how I'm feeling. I think it's definitely helped me feel like I have more of a voice and made me feel less small. I feel like this year's just been a huge journey of becoming more me. Like every time I feel like I have like a revelation or I'm like going through something and I come out the other end, I'm always like, wow, I feel so much more like myself, which is a beautiful thing to feel. I feel like life is just this big pursuit of finding ourselves, and I feel like we just find ourselves by constantly letting things go and constantly coming to terms with like, oh wait, that's not me. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm gonna just chill here for a bit, listen to some music, do some writing maybe. I'm getting kind of sleepy here, honestly. Like it's very quiet. I feel like I didn't get enough sleep last night, so I'm kind of tired.